Welcome to the Thoroughly Wrong Project with Lalo and Bob. We appreciate you spending some time with us today. Let's jump right into that weekly dose of things you can disagree with. Take it away, guys.
All right. Good morning and welcome to the Thoroughly Wrong Project. I'm your host, Bob, and this is my co-host, and we still haven't fucking worked that out, Lalo. And yeah, I know. It doesn't matter. It's just semantics anyway. I got some exciting news, Lalo. I'm not hungover. I'm not hungover. Yep. I think I've given up drinking. It's not cool. I mean,
it's cool, but it's just not for everybody, I guess.
It's mighty unhandy is what it is. Even if you only do it once a week, man. It's like I wasn't recovering until Monday, so.
Just have like one glass of, I don't know, whatever you like to drink.
That's just like putting the head in, Lalo. It doesn't it doesn't satisfy. That was wildly inappropriate, which leads me to this. Can we talk about the difference between Jon Gruden and Dave Chapelle? Can we talk about the difference between that?
Yeah, that's fine. Oh man, I remember I was because we have I'm in a fantasy football league.
Mm-hmm.
So we're always either talking trash or just talking about the games or whatever's going on.
Of course.
And I remember I checked my phone and it was there was 20 missed messages. And it was right when the news broke about Jon Gruden. I was like, fuck.
But he deserved it.
I mean, yeah, there's I don't have any problem with it. I mean, if it was, people say that and then they're like, well, what if it was Bill Belichick, because, I'm a Patriots fan. I'm
Right.
Well, I mean, it's the same way. It's the same thing either way. If it was him, then I wouldn't be, I'd be upset that it happened, but I'm not going to be oh, it's not a big deal. It was fucking 10 years ago type of thing,
Well, that's when I first heard it. I was like, well, it was 11 years ago and it was one email. And then it turned out, well, it was the entire time and it was 100 emails. So, yeah, I mean, I got really fucking mixed feelings about the whole thing, because I don't I may as well say it. I don't like this woke culture bullshit. And I'm sorry I call it bullshit. Okay, let's not denounce it. I don't like the woke culture thing. I don't like and everybody says there's no such thing as cancel culture. Well, let's talk about some of the people that got canceled then, because there is. But there's this fine line we walk between entertainment and people who are in charge of things. Dave Chappelle's not in charge of anything. He's just a comedian, and there's been a lot worse comedians down through the ages. It started with, I know you're not old enough, but Don Rickles. And there was an entire thing in the 60s called insult comedy. And all he did was stand up there and insult people in the crowd. So,
right.
You're an entertainer doesn't have any responsibility to culture other than to point out the absurdity of it.
An entertainer or a comedian?
And a comedian.
Oh, okay.
A comedian.
Yeah, because I mean, the way I see people like to say for Jon Gruden's situation, like you just said right now, this woke culture is getting out of hand, and
yeah,
it's too much. The whole excuse of oh, it was 10 years ago. That's just how people talked back then. But that's not, to me, that's not an excuse. Oh, that's just how it was back then.
Right.
That doesn't make it okay.
Right.
I think that's the the mindset that's changing. That mindset of that's not okay. It never was okay. It's never gonna be okay. And I mean, not to sound a little fucking vindictive or anything, but Jon Gruden's ass is 100% still that dude.
Oh yeah, definitely. Worse, he's worse now because he doesn't have any restraint. He doesn't have any constraints on him to stop saying it.
But it's like I mean, yeah, that's like my opinion on it. Like, it's not so much like people are like hypersensitive, and I mean there is that group of people that are like super hypersensitive about like anything like that. But I think it's more of a like that page is turning on like what we deem as like appropriate and acceptable,
Right.
And a lot of people like won't turn that page, and they're just gonna be stuck in that whole like, well, that's just how I grew up saying all these things, and it didn't bother anybody. But the truth is, it did bother a lot of people. You just didn't see it.
Yeah, because they weren't
And
allowed to say it bothers me.
it's easy to say, you know, faggot this and faggot that when you're some fucking straight white dude in like the Midwest. Like, oh, that doesn't bother me. Of course, it's not going to bother you. Nothing you say that's offensive is going to bother you. You're just a regular ass white dude, you know?
Wait a minute, I'm a regular ass white dude.
But like the list of things that are going to offend you.
Hey man, I feel threatened. I feel threatened.
It's a very short list.
Yeah, I just see.
I think that's what people don't get. Like, it's hard to see these things as offensive because they don't offend you, And like, even for me, like a lot of those things don't offend me. They're like, but I'm able to see why they're offensive and kind of like put myself in the position of like, well, if I was like this person and then I heard that, would I feel offended? And that's hard to do for a lot of people.
Well, if we're offended by Dave Chapelle, if we're offended by Richard Pryor, George Carlin, the list is huge. Oh, if you're offended by it, don't listen to it. I mean, I don't think Richard Pryor perpetuated racism, although he used the N-word every other word. And he pointed out the absurdity of white culture, and he pointed out the absurdity of black culture. And I don't think it was harmful in any way. In fact, Richard Pryor was one of the ones that brought it to light of what was going on and what, well, I guess everybody knew what was going on, but he brought it out into the mainstream to say, hey, let's talk about it. Let's have a dialogue about it. And Chappelle's mean. I'll give you that. I mean, I watched that special that he did, that last one, and he had some very mean things to say. But at the same time, I think he's angry that he's not allowed, he's not free to say those things anymore. And I
mean,
he
is free. I mean, he said them. It's not like
right, but it wasn't in a comedic way. Some of it wasn't in a comedic way. Some of it was just plain fucking mean, And
I think, like, and I've mentioned this before, like the whole like Dave Chapelle and Jon Gruden thing. Like, to me, those are two like vastly different
right
situations. Because when it comes to like comedians and comedy, I have like a no holds barred, filter.
Right.
Where
but
to me,
a lot of people don't.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the difference. Not a lot of people don't see it that way. And I mean, that's fine. Like, they're free to do that. And they're free to, call Netflix up and, that demand that they take him down. But I mean, I think this is like his second or third special where he's talked about like trans people, and they did the same thing. Netflix was like asked to take him down like by groups and like just by people,
Right.
And they stood by him like every single time. And I mean, I don't see anything wrong with that. But dang, what was I gonna say? Yeah, to me, it's just like it's like comedy to me has no, at least for me personally, has no filter. So it's just.
So comedy gets a pass.
Comedy. For me, yes, personally. But I mean, if you try to like interject that, like the themes of the comedy into like news or like, you know, I don't know, like talk shows or whatever,
Hmm.
then it's like you're 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 crossing that, hey, this is a comedy show barrier, into
Right.
like, hey, this is the news, and you know, Dave Chappelle said this, so I'm gonna say it too. And it's when you say it versus when Dave Chappelle says it. When Dave Chappelle says something and then Tucker Carlson says the same thing, it doesn't hold the same weight on both ends.
Right. Right. There there's a place, there's a time and a place for that, and it's those particular comedians. But like you said, I to go out and to repeat what Dave Chappelle said. Well, we can't go out and do a lot of things that we see in comedy or entertainment in the movies. They're just entertainment to us. We have to put them there. And people like Jon Gruden and people like him who have gotten, and as much as I hate to say it, canceled or gotten marginalized because of they were in charge of things. They were you can't be a racist in a football league because that's illegal. There are laws about it. On the stage as a comedian, you can say pretty much whatever you want to say. There's no law. It's just this moral veil that we have that I don't even know how to describe it. It's so frustrating to me to conflate the two together. Here's Jon Gruden who's saying, rubber lips and being just outright fucking mean and hating on women and hating on homosexuals. And it was this vicious thing that he was doing, where Chappelle and the rest of the comedic world is just pointing it out. It's like, this is how we feel. And yeah, it kind of lets off that tension. It's like, well, maybe I'm a fucking idiot for thinking like that, because when you put it in those terms, that's me. And I don't want to be like that. And Chappelle to me is funny because he points out the way I used to be. I used to feel that way, but it wasn't my fault. I had no other way of living, no other way of looking at things. No one had ever showed me anything.
Right.
So I
And
know Gruden has seen other ways of being and just refuses to do it.
yeah, and I think Gruden, I think his like situations has like an element of like he was a leader. He was the head coach of this football team,
Right.
and I mean, it was very like, to me, it was very ironic that like the only openly gay football player was on the Raiders, and here he is like secretly talking about people like him, like in the way that he was.
Right.
So it kind of made you like wonder, like, okay, like yeah, did he ever even like respect the player, to
I
begin
don't
with?
think so. I don't think he
Or did
did.
he lose respect when he came out? Maybe he didn't even know.
Yeah,
And then just all those
it's
little things
harsh,
that
man.
people start to think of, I'm sure the player was like, after that news broke, he was like, what the fuck? Like, has this whole like thing been like a lie to me? Or like, maybe like things started to make sense for him, that, like personal situations that happened between him and the coach. Um, and
Did
it's
his
just those little things that you never know, and they just like cause distractions for the team. And I mean, technically he didn't get fired. He quit on his own.
right.
I mean, I'm sure he was like pressured and pushed by like the owner and stuff, but I mean, he said himself, like, I don't want to be a distraction, which that's the only thing he would have been for, I mean, the rest of the year, if not longer.
Yeah, and what was that $100 million contract? He made 4 years of it. Do they have to pay him for the rest of it?
No, it's
Did
only
they?
like I mean, when you sign a contract, there's a guaranteed portion of it. So
Right.
whatever the guaranteed money is, that's what they would have to pay him. And the guaranteed money is usually a lot less than the full contract. So
Well, he walks out with 40 million anyway. I think he'll be okay.
yeah, I mean, he's not going to be like struggling for money, and I'm sure he might get a job. Like he might have to like lay low for a few years, but we'll see him like somewhere again at some point. I will say this though. The one thing that about Chappelle's like special that was, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was like funny, for me.
Yeah.
But the one thing that did kind of disappoint me was I felt like Dave was kind of going for like the low hanging fruit when it came to like the joke material. If
Right.
that makes any sense.
Yeah, of course.
I think because I mean in the last special he talked about the trans community, and he got a lot of pushback for that too. So I think he like he saw the pushback that he felt, and he like felt some type of way about it. So the next special he kind of like doubled down on it, as a like, oh, I'll show you like I could talk about whatever I want.
I could be worse.
And to me that's kind of just like I said, like just low hanging fruit, and I don't know, it's kind of, I don't know, maybe like a little out of character for Dave Chappelle.
Well, didn't he had that show, the Chappelle show, and then didn't he just kind of flake out and go to Africa for a while?
Yeah, he like canceled the show like in like its prime. But I mean, I don't know like all the circumstances around that.
I think he had a
I'm sure there
nervous
was
breakdown. I mean, so he may not be I'm not calling him mentally ill or anything, but he might have depressive issues and things like that. So we don't know what people are thinking, but you're
I'm pretty sure,
absolutely
like,
right.
I'm pretty sure every like professional stand-up comedian has some sort of like depression issues. I think you have to if you want to be a stand-up comedian.
Is that part of the
Part, part of the job.
part of the job? I'm a little depressed, so I'll just go be funny. No, I don't think all of them. I know Seinfeld. He's not. He's just shrewd. He made up that whole comedy genre, and he's just a shrewd motherfucker. Now he's a billionaire. Whatever. We're down here. We're down here laughing at his jokes, and he's laughing all the way to the bank, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how much
But yeah,
did Chappelle make off that?
I mean, Chappelle's like all these people are like well off. Like they're not gonna struggle anytime soon for the rest of their lives. So I mean,
Well, I see. You know, it's funny. It's funny you should mention that. It's like these comics that they stroke. It looks like everybody, Lalo, right from MMA fighters who, if you go to a MMA amateur fight, they're fucking struggling, beating the hell out of each other, and poor comedians are struggling and trying to be funny, and like musicians who are pouring their heart out poetically, and everybody, and as you get money, then things change. Like Trent Reznor, who founded Nine Inch Nails, who was fucking angry about culture and society and had all these great things to say about loneliness and depression and struggling, and then you get rich, and that spark of genius you lose. So Chappelle went for the low hanging fruit, but maybe that's all he has left, man. Maybe he doesn't have that same mentality that he had when he wanted to get famous. And in fact, when he came out on stage, he said, "I'm rich as a motherfucker," is what he said. So
yeah,
he's pointing it out. I'm not what I was.
yeah, because he has a contract with Netflix.
Yeah.
It's like a certain amount of specials that he has to do. So
Mhm.
it might be true, like where he's just like trying to fulfill that contract and then just bounce.
Just bounce. I like that word.
So is trying to fill in the hour with whatever material he can find, and then just
That
go
last
out.
hour with your therapist, you don't really need her anymore, so you're just kind of talking about your mom.
Yeah, I mean, I've
Yeah.
never seen like a lot of Chappelle like material. Like I think it's funny. I've just never like super been into like his stuff. Um, but I know like that's like his like that's his genre of comedy, like edgy, like offensive type of shit.
Sure.
It's fine. Like I like that kind of comedy. Like I like like the Louis C.K.'s. And Louis C.K.'s been fucking dormant for like years now.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you want to talk about that?
I
I
mean,
I got some shit to say about Louis C.K. I do. I really, and it's
he
really kind of
like to me
offensive.
personally, Louis C.K.'s like he's like definitely one of my like top three favorite comedians. But then I remember when all that stuff came out about him when he was like masturbating like in front of like fans or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I mean, don't get me wrong, that's some like sick like creep shit. But I remember people were like comparing him to like Kevin Spacey and shit,
Right.
or
And
like
no, it
people
wasn't.
that were like rapists. And I was like, no, he's like, that's probably like, it might be illegal, like indecent exposure and, fucking creepy ass shit and like kind of sad because he's a grown ass man, like he's an old ass dude. But it's not like rape. Um, and there, he was definitely taking advantage of like the power imbalance and, his celebrity status
Okay.
versus, a fan. And I
I'm
recognize that.
I'm giving you all that,
Um,
but I
but I
want to
don't
talk
think it was
about
fair. I don't think it was fair to compare him to like fucking, you know, rape.
right because if I tell say I meet somebody at the pool in the hotel and I say, hey, I'm, going to come back to and have a drink or whatever he said. And they came back and everybody was talking and he said, and they admitted, do you mind if I masturbate? Now, however fucking improper that is or however whatever, it, it may be just some kinky shit in his mind. It's that doesn't necessarily have to be depraved. It may be part of his sexuality. We don't know that. But the thing is, when someone says, "Do you mind if I masturbate?" and and you realize it's not a joke, you have every opportunity to get up and walk out of the fucking room. But they
But
sat there
see,
and watched.
I don't like if it's a normal ass person, I can I can see that. But I think there's that power imbalance of like that's when that power like imbalance comes into effect.
Right?
And then again, like we kind of have to this is one of those situations that I was talking about earlier where you kind of have to put yourself in the position of, let's say you're um it doesn't even have to be Louis C.K. It could be any just dude. You're in
Right.
a room with them in their hotel room and they ask you that. And I can imagine like as a woman in that position, like as soon as you hear that, like a million things rush through your head. And one of those things has to be if I say no and if I try to leave, will this guy get aggressive with me? Will he try to, keep me here, kidnap me, rape me, do whatever?
Right.
And that's just
Yep.
something we don't think about. To like you just mentioned right now, she could have just walked out and left.
There were
Yeah, I'm
two of
sure
them
she
though,
could.
dude. There were
Yeah,
two.
I'm sure. Yeah, but still, like that thought goes through their mind every time. It's just
Right.
like, that whole like example of, walking to your car at night.
Hmm.
Like we never think, oh shit, someone's gonna fucking kidnap me and rape me. Like that thought has never gone through my mind. But I guarantee you it's gone through the mind of like many, young women and young girls like walking to their car at night.
Right. Right.
And it's just something we can't relate to because it's just not part of our lives. It's not part of our, daily, struggles. So yeah, when it came like it's easy to say they could have just left or they could just said no, but you don't know what's gonna happen next. So I feel like in some sense they were kind of obligated to say yes and be like, okay, maybe he's gonna do his thing and then we could leave.
Right.
Because they just don't know, and that unknown is like scary for a lot of people, as it should
I,
be,
yeah.
especially in a situation
I'll
like
give
that
you
because
that.
there's a lot of like sex like driven crimes and stuff like that.
Hmm.
um so I mean I understand that, and I don't like I used to say that too. Yeah, like, oh well, he asked them and they said yes, so it's like consented. I mean, legally I guess it was consented, but it's deeper than that. Especially when you really like think about the entire picture, the entire situation. It's more of a like a little bit of coerced consent. Like, hey, look, it's this super like famous celebrity. He's rich. Like that's one part of it. Like maybe, I'll get something out of this. And then the other part is like, oh, what if I say no? Like, what is he going to do? You know?
And let's not forget that other part of, you said a million things go through their brain. Let's not forget that one part that says, yeah, sure.
But I mean, if you've seen Louis C.K., he's not like some like super like 6'4" ripped dude.
No.
So I think the amount of girls that would just be like, yeah, that's fine. It's not.
Not a lot. Yeah, I get
Yeah.
it. But we're going back to the hotel room, and like, isn't this and I know we're going to open up a fucking can of worms here, but this kind of a Kobe situation, hotel room, sex, it's like everybody, they settled that one out of court and no, it wasn't rape. And yeah. And Kobe said, yes, I fucking cheated on my wife and everything, but don't you think it's the same thing here? It's like, was she coerced? Did she fall victim to status of celebrity and was afraid what would happen if she didn't?
I mean, I think those are just things that it's hard to tell, like, unless we were there,
Right.
There's probably like a lot of alcohol involved.
Mm-hmm.
She might have been like, they might have been drunk or buzzed, at the least. So I think it's just one of those things where like we can play like the million, like what if,
Right.
but unless we knew like the exact situation and, unless we were like a fly on the wall seeing everything, it's very hard to tell. But my guess, based on like everything that's like that we know, my guess would be that it wasn't like, if they had a free like choice, like, hey, you can say yes or no, and we'll like escort you out the room or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is they probably would have said no if they were like sober and free of fear, I guess.
I'm going to agree with you. We can't know what was going on because there's a different status. If it was you or I and we're in
There's
a
a lot of
hotel room,
variables.
yeah, if it was you or I and I'm like, hey, I'm going to fucking jerk off, I'm not a celebrity, I'm going to get fucking punched in my face. There's all kinds of different things here. So I don't know. I'm glad that we have reached this tipping point in culture where we can talk about these things. That's one thing I'm grateful for. I'm not grateful for the knee-jerk reactions that we have to a lot of things, and the absolute, I'm just going to denounce it because at first impression, and you and I are sitting here talking about all the variables and all the things that are different, and the levels of celebrity status or socioeconomic status and who the girls were. It just seems like to me that a lot of people nowadays are hearing things, not actually taking into account what they are, but if it offends me, then you need to fucking stop. And I'm going to get online and I'm going to create, some sort of ruckus to take you down because I don't like what you said. And it seems like these people, this woke culture nonsense they're just trying to feel safe about everything. And it's like, put me in a box and I feel safe in here and you can't bother me. So we can learn a lot from Chapelle if we look at it from a psychological viewpoint, from a philosophical viewpoint, from a cultural standpoint. There's all kinds of ways we can look at Gruden and Chapelle and Louis C.K. and what's wrong with our culture and what's right with our culture. And we could learn from that, but instead we just denounce them. And then the only people talking about it are the philosophers and the podcasters, and the rest of them are just, they have that smug Karen, I took him down bullshit. And it just seems like no matter what you say or what you do, you got to be careful nowadays. You're going to offend somebody and get taken out.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's been the case for like a long time. But like you said earlier, it's just like people are more willing to talk about it,
Yeah.
Whereas before people just kind of like took it or, turned a blind eye to it. and that gave the like illusion of it being okay, you know?
Right.
It's not like people think like that, you know, like for example, like the LGBTQ community like just like came out of nowhere. Like no, there's been gay, like bi, like trans people forever.
Right.
You just didn't see it because it wasn't like socially acceptable to be those things for the longest time.
Right.
That doesn't change the fact of how they felt and like who they were. It just made it look like, you know, it wasn't that big of a deal.
Well, we've empowered an angry section of culture is what's happened.
And I mean, I understand that, like, and I
And
could
I get
see,
it.
yeah. And I mean, they have, you know, all the right to be angry. Um, and it might be like like one of those like overreaction things, but I think it's one of those things where we kind of like brought it upon ourselves, you know. Um, it's one of those things that, I mean, it's a natural reaction for considering everything that happened before, you know.
Right.
So I'm not like super like upset about it. And like the whole like cancel culture thing, like I think what we need to do uh, a job at though is being able to like distinguish the different like situations. Like people like we started off, you know, comparing like Jon Gruden and Dave Chapelle. Like
Hmm.
to me, those are two very different like situations. But people
Right.
talk about them like they're one and the same. Like, oh, they canceled Jon Gruden. Now they're trying to go after Dave Chappelle. But it's
Yeah.
like
That's why I
they're
wanted to
two
talk
different,
about it.
right? So I think it's almost like a case by case basis. And I mean, some people do deserve to like fucking like, you know, get deplatformed or whatever it may be. And I mean, most people that get, you know, canceled, um, they're fine. Like when it comes to like money and shit,
Right.
like they're not gonna be, you know, on the street being homeless or anything like that.
Well, I think I think we need to let people I think we need to allow people to learn and say that they're sorry. And I'm not sure how we can validate their apology, but like this very podcast right here, when you said the two girls in the hotel room probably had some fear. Well, I never fucking thought about that. Okay, so I changed the way I thought about Louis C.K. So that was wrong in my eyes. And where I used to say, okay, he asked, now I have to inject that information that I have into that conversation that I have in my head and say, well, they're females and I don't have a female mentality and I don't have a female mind and I don't have that female fear of male domination and male violence. So now I think a different way, and you taught me something. We we need to allow people to say things. You know, Louis C.K. needs to be able to say, you know what, I never fucking thought about that. And maybe even Jon Gruden needs to be able to say that, dude. You know, people do learn.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm sure like, for example, Louis, like I mean, I'm sure even he was aware of some sort of like, at least the power imbalance between, you know, him and his own fans, you know?
Right.
And he kind of just like used that to his advantage. But I mean, and that, like I said, he's one of my favorite comedians and he's still one of my favorite comedians, but I am able to criticize him for, you know, the wrongs that he did. And I'm able to accept that, you know, he's gonna go away for a while. Like in that situation, I think, I mean, it's hard to say like what's the right thing to do. Like,
Right.
because I mean, you could apologize like on Instagram, or you could like, you know, release a video apologizing. But um, it's kind of one of those things where, regardless of what you say, it's just gonna take time for it to like kind of settle down. You know, like
Right.
there's not gonna be a single apology or anything that anybody could say that's gonna make it okay like immediately. You know, like oh okay, that apology was really well said. So you know, we accept it and we can move on like the next day. No, like
No,
when
not
when stuff like that happens, you could apologize and you could sincerely mean it, and that's great. But you also have to realize that it's gonna take time for it to like kind of like settle back down. And maybe you should lay low for a bit. Maybe you should try to get involved with like uh, maybe like the group of people you offended, and actually show that you're like trying to change and try to learn from what happened. And I mean, at the end of the day, there's still going to be people that hate you, and that's okay.
of
But
course.
if you truly regret it, and if you truly feel bad, and if you truly want to change for the better, then you do those things and you come out a better person at the end. And I'm sure you're still going to have fans at the other side, and then you could go from there. Like there's people that to this day hate Michael Vick. They'll never see Michael Vick the same way.
Right.
He could, he served his time. He could have started like dog rescues or whatever. And they're still gonna hate him, and that's fine. But he still has a ton of fans. It's just one of those things that you're gonna have to live with the consequences of your choices, and that's one of the consequences.
Yeah, I think a real dog lover, is not going to see how to get over that. It's just different people are committed to their ideals in different ways. You can't. Yeah,
Yeah,
if,
there's
if you
hills that people die on, and those hills are different for everybody.
right, that's a good analogy. But some people like the early. Do you remember Michael? Oh, what's his name? Michael Richards. You know him?
No.
He was Kramer on Seinfeld.
Oh, okay.
So he was a stand-up comedian, and he did Seinfeld, and then he went back to stand-up comedy, and then he was in a comedy club, and he used the N-word on stage improperly, and he got fucking crushed, canceled, dude. He'll never be back. And it was a reactionary thing. So that was like the first. It was like we took down a celebrity. That's the first one, and then it just fucking snowballed from there. And it's morphed and changed now. So not everybody gets to come back. Not everybody's going to come back. Michael Richards will never be back on stage, and he knows that. But it was a mistake. It wasn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things that, what happens kind of happens. It's not. I mean, I don't know the whole like circumstances around that. Like,
Right.
I don't know like what like situation he said it in. I'm sure it was like during a show or something.
Well,
Or was it like off camera?
it was no, it was not on television. It was it was like a comedy club in LA, and it was a table full of, and I believe they were Jamaicans, and they were heckling him and used the N-word to him, and he turned around and turned it back on him and used it again, and it came out wrong. It was just, and somebody caught it on an iPhone, and it was over for him. So some
I
people
think
don't get to come
I've heard
back.
of that. I haven't like seen the clip, but I've heard of like his. I've heard of that like situation.
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't think it was malicious. I think it was just it was a bad joke.
It was like a reaction type of thing.
Yeah, he didn't
And
think
they
before he
didn't pan
spoke. It didn't pan out because somebody caught it on an iPhone and put it on YouTube, and that was it. Bye, Michael Richards. It was nice knowing you. And it seems like we do have quite a few of those people who will never be back. Maybe they don't need to come back. I don't know. I'm torn between protecting people and protecting comedy. I don't, God damn it, dude. I don't know. This is such a touchy subject. I do want to get a t-shirt that says fuck woke culture though. Because
Yeah, to me, I just have that like mentality of when it comes to like comedy shows and comedians, like, anything goes. Um, but I understand that not everybody's like that.
Right.
Um, but when it comes to like comedy or comedy shows, like if you have like the opportunity and the choice to just like leave or to, not watch it.
Right.
And I know sometimes that argument could come off as a little like ignorant, like, oh, we'll just, turn off the TV. But um I think also comedians maybe should try to do a better job of like drawing that line of, hey, like there's a comedy show, like I'm not gonna like I don't really. I mean, it's hard. Like it sounds bad. Like, oh, I don't really mean all these things I'm gonna say, but like maybe just do a better job at like kind of drawing that line, of like the real life versus the comedy show. But I mean, even then, it gets a little sketchy
Even
too.
George Carlin got away with so much that it paved the way for this. And maybe culture is waking up, man. I mean, maybe things are changing because Carlin actually stood on stage and said, he says, I'm getting ready to make a statement. Rape is funny. And it was like, America, have you ever seen that clip?
No, I haven't seen that clip,
Yeah,
but I've seen
man.
some of his other stuff.
Yeah. And he said, I think he said, imagine rape is funny in context. Imagine Porky Pig raping Donald Duck. So, and then he did the voices, and see, I'm uncomfortable bringing that up because rape is not funny. But at that point in time, George Carlin was so edgy, and it almost that one almost took him down.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also like we're pretty good at like reading people's like intent and like trying to figure out the actual like kind of person they are, So
Right.
like Dave Chapelle, he like makes fun of everybody, He's kind of like fixed on the trans community right now. But I mean, if you look at his history, you name like a marginalized group and he's made fun of them.
He took them down. Yeah.
Same with things like South Park, Family Guy, all those type of shows.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't specifically target like one group of people and then just hammer them, to hell.
Right.
If it was like that, if it was one of those situations, like I could see people being like, okay, like, we get it. You don't like so and so. And then if they just keep going, you could tell like, okay, they have some sort of like vendetta. Maybe they're just like fucking homophobic or whatever,
Right.
or racist. So I think when like I don't know, it's just so much like so many variables and so many things to take into account that we just don't, because it's easy to just, make a broad statement and be like, so and so is racist because they made this joke, but 2 years ago they said something that like contradicted this, and we just don't.
I could be
It's all
construed.
about the recent.
You could be construed as a racist. I can be construed as a racist. It's just the things that we say, and if somebody would walk in the room and some of the conversations I'm having, which are very Dave Chappelle-ish, and because that's my type of humor, that's what I listen to, that's what I think is funny, and if I repeat that in a private group of friends, haha, that's funny, Dave Chappelle said that, but if somebody walked in the door just as you were saying some of that shit, you'd be like, oh, you're fucked, man. You're done.
Yeah.
It's such a. I'm glad it's out. Like I said, I'm glad it's out. I'm glad we can talk about it from philosophical viewpoints and cultural viewpoints and moral aspects and ethical aspects, and it brings out the truth of the marginalized community of the trans people. And now at least we have to say we're talking about it. Dave Chappelle is not hitting you with a baseball bat. He's simply talking about it. And that one joke he told of little baby shooting that guy in a Walmart, it's like, you can shoot somebody, but don't hurt a gay person's feelings. I had to laugh about that because there's some truth in that.
And I mean, I don't know most, but a lot of comedy has like elements of like stereotypes or like truths behind them too. So
Yeah, well, isn't that everything? A lot of stereotypes have a lot of truth in it, or at least an element of truth.
yeah, but and then I mean, I understand if people just like hate Dave Chappelle. I mean, even for for his like latest special, and
Right.
they just choose to hate him. Like, I'm not gonna fight them on it. Like, that's the way they feel, and that's fine. Like with me, I'm not like Dave Chappelle's mom or anything. I don't really I don't really care if they hate him. Just like I don't care if people hate anybody that I really like. Um, it's
Well,
really
if
up to
somebody
them.
hates your girlfriend, that kind of gets to you. It's like, well, come on, man.
But like when it comes to like celebrities, I don't. When it comes to celebrities, I'm not like super gonna like defend them like on everything because I mean they're celebrities. Like I don't hold
Yeah,
them in that high of a pedestal.
yeah. I'm going to throw down about if somebody says something about Anthony Fauci, man.
But see, the fact that he's a celebrity is kind of like sad because he's just trying to be a doctor and shit.
Right. But he's probably enjoying it. The
No, I don't
celebrity
think he's enjoyed.
status.
I think he enjoyed like the time before COVID. He was just like a regular ass like doctor for the government, just doing his job.
It was probably cool to be on CNN the first couple times. Like, hey, man, I'm fucking on CNN. And now he's like, fuck, leave me alone so I can get some work done, man.
Yeah,
Uh, oh, at least we're talking about it, right? That
yeah,
can we all just agree that people like Chappelle and Gruden it's almost like we're digging down into the dirt now and pulling up the root of this thing. Let's talk about what, Jon Gruden, why would he say something like that? Well, because this is the culture he's from. And then you say things like, well, he comes from a culture where that was okay. And then somebody says, well, that doesn't make it okay. And then you have to go, you're right, it doesn't. But we have to look at this historically and as it's morphed and changed. And it's not just race now, and now it's sexuality and choices we make and the way we dress and the way we think and the niches and the way we've marginalized ourselves. And it's this cool morphing of a culture that is immersed in capitalism, and now we have all this fucking free time to talk about these things. Back in the day, everybody was just working 12, 14, 16 hours a day, coming home exhausted, falling into bed. We don't, we hate black people and that's the way it is. And there's no time to talk about it. And thank God that we've come this far. It's like the evolution of a culture. And how fascinating is that in the 70s, when this lesbian gay thing started to open up, back in the 60s, and well, is he back in as far back as the 50s when we had beat poetry who were gay, and they were beginning to come into the mainstream. And even though they were gay, there were niches of culture that accepted that, and then it grew, and these tendrils of acceptance start to grow through the culture, and you're still going to run into the fucking hardcore gay hating assholes, and you're not going to change them. But the thing is, you may change their children, which is what happened in my case. You're not going to change my dad, but you changed his son, and his son had children who raised his children to be more tolerant. So I'm kind of a tipping point between that ultra racism and hatred and my children who accept everyone. But I'm still, Lalo, I still have those thoughts where Dave Chapelle is funny to me. So my children don't accept Dave Chapelle as funny anymore because that's not funny. So it's this moving along of culture, but we can't fucking go back and dismiss all the people that helped get us here. And that seems to be what's happening with John Wayne was interviewed in Playboy magazine and he said something about black people. So we need to remove John Wayne from culture. No, we don't. We need to look at what he said, why he said it, and analyze that and say, let's not think that way anymore. But this is still a part of our fucking culture. Racism, ageism, hating the gays, that's still a part of us. And we got to this point because we did that.
Yeah, like I get we should like acknowledge that it's there, just for the whole like so it doesn't happen again type of thing.
Right.
But I mean, I don't see anything wrong with like trying to not so much remove that, like physically, but like mentally.
Right.
So I mean, I don't see anything wrong with trying to like progress to the point where anybody that's like racist or anything like that is like platformed, or has like a voice to speak on. Because I mean, at the end of the day, like all those people that are like defending like Jon Gruden, like if you really look down, like their bare bones argument is like they think that what he said was okay or not that bad,
Right. Right.
That's like the whole thing of their argument, like the base of their argument, that they don't think he should be fired for the things he said because they don't think it's that bad. And that's where I think they're wrong. It might have not seemed bad, or in your perspective, it's not bad because like I said, none of those things affect you. And they probably never will because you're never gonna be in that group of people that he's referring to. I think in one of the emails he said queer or like queer something, and it's like you're a straight dude from fucking anywhere here. Like that's not gonna offend you, and why would it? You're not part of the gay community or anything like that. So to you, that's just like, oh, it's just a word. Like he didn't mean it like bad. I mean, I'm pretty sure he meant it in a bad type of way because I forgot the context that he was saying it, but it wasn't like in a jokey way. But I think that's the hardest hump that we have to get over. And like you said, it's not one of those things where, I mean, you could talk to people and try to like teach them. And, there are some people that are kind of like, that will realize, the wrongs in their thinking and change their ways a little bit. But majority of them aren't. So these, like you said, these issues like racism, homophobia, like they're going to take generations to like get over,
Right.
It's going to take that, maybe not you, but like your kids or your kids' kids, they're going to, flip that page and be like, hey, that's not okay,
Right.
So
we still
it's
have
hard
to
to
recognize what we are and not try to erase it. Because if we try to erase it, then we're not going to learn anything. It's just going to perpetuate. It'll come up
I don't
again
think we try
in the
to
future.
erase it because, I mean, we still learn about racism and like transphobia, homophobia. Like we learn about it. We know what that is. We know what that looks like. But I don't think it's so much erasing like the acknowledgement of it as much as trying to get rid of the ability for it to grow,
Right.
Because I mean, some of these people, like if there's like some racist, like if you have some like old racist neighbor in your hometown, like nobody's gonna pay attention to him. But if like that, like there's some super influential celebrity that has the same views as your racist neighbor, guess what? People are gonna listen to that guy.
They are.
And they're gonna, they're gonna spew the same shit that he's spewing at himself. And I think
that feeds the racist neighbor too. Don't forget.
Yeah. So I mean, trying to like, I don't know if silence is the right word, but like deplatform that guy, I don't see anything wrong with that.
No,
and, you could.
I agree.
So that's my take on that.
That racist neighbor, he's not dangerous until you find out he's having meetings in his basement with other racist neighbors. Then there's a fucking problem.
It's like the whole like Confederate statues thing. All these fucking Southerners try to say like, oh, you can't erase our history. Like no one's erasing your history. We're just not glorifying what these statues like stood for.
Right.
You know, you don't see any fucking Hitler statues in Germany. And guess what? They know well about Hitler. They're not trying to fucking do that again. Just because you take down the statues, like, because I mean, that's what statues are meant, like, to glorify whatever, you know, they're representing.
Right.
If you learned all your Civil War history just by looking at fucking statues, then you should probably go back to school. There's no Confederate statues here. And, you know, I learned all about the Civil War. So that's a terrible argument for, you know, doing that type of thing.
I have morphed on that too, man. When they first started ripping that shit down, I was like, well, you know, there's two sides to it. There's the art side to it, and you could put these things in a museum or go put the statues in your fucking Confederate, you know, cemeteries. But then now I'm just like, you know what? Just put that shit away because we don't need it. It's like,
I mean, if you want to have like a fucking statue of Robert E. Lee, like in your front yard, you know, go nuts. But when it comes to like, because I mean, a lot of these statues are like in front of like state buildings and like court buildings. So it's like government funded, you know?
I know.
Like there's like black people somewhere in the South that their tax dollars is going towards paying for a statue of like some Confederate like general. And that's like pretty fucked up if you think about it.
It is pretty fucked up, yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to, you know, fucking build your own statue and put it on the top of your house, go nuts. I could give two shits.
In my 20 miles from my hometown is in West Virginia is the county seat, and it's Lewis County, West Virginia, and there's a Confederate statue in front of the courthouse, Stonewall Jackson. So, and there's Stonewall Jackson Dam and Stonewall Jackson Park and Stonewall Jackson Lake and Stonewall Jackson Avenue, and everything is about Stonewall Jackson because he was born there. So everything is named after him. And every year it comes up, should we take down the statue? And it's the same vote. No.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of that stuff went up because, I mean, even after the South lost, they were still like there, you know, like that mindset didn't go away.
Oh, you mean like after Donald Trump lost, that fucking mindset didn't go away?
Exactly. So those people are the ones that like built the statues and put them up and then try to convince all the people there that, oh, you know, it's part of our history and it represents, you know, whatever the fuck they think it represents.
It represents our history, man. We are racist.
Yeah, that's the part they leave out. Like, oh, it's just part of our history. Like, okay, what history is that? And they either don't know or they don't want to say it. It's like the people that argue that the Civil War was about states' rights. It wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights. Well, the states' rights to do what? To have fucking slaves. Like, what? Why is that so hard to understand?
Because it makes you look bad. And see, this podcast keeps coming back to that same point. Here it is. We can talk about it now. Let's talk about this. You know, like, I know you don't want to take down your statues, but listen, let's sit down here and have a fucking beer or whatever you want to fucking smoke, and let's talk about this, because you're absolutely right. It's like, that's my fucking history. History of what? What are we talking about here? We're talking about the history of what? Well, the history of the Civil War. Well, what's the Civil War about? States' rights. For what? Well, slavery. Okay, then your whole fucking argument boils down to you want that statue because you want to glorify slavery. Okay, let's take it down. Some people you're going to convince. The educated you're going to convince. The younger generation you're going to convince. But you're not going to get rid of my father, my grandfather, you know, the people that are still alive above the age of 70, 75. They're entrenched in it, man, and you're not going to get rid of it. So we need to not marginalize them, though. We can't marginalize them. We just have to make them harmless somehow.
I can get behind that. Yeah.
Yeah, we got to make John Doe the next door neighbor that is very hateful and very racist. When he talks to you, he talks about the Mexican culture or the gays in a very derogatory way. We can't marginalize this guy. We can't take his job. We can't do that to him. We just have to let him live out his life, but we have to somehow insulate him and not marginalize, but insulate and make him harmless, because he's not going to change. But at the same time, we cannot denounce him and take away his freedom to do what he does, as long as he's not hurting anyone. Like you said, you want to go buy the fucking statue and put it in your yard, fucking do it. There's that guy in Oildale that proudly flies that giant fucking rebel flag.
Yeah.
Let him do it. And to me, that guy is harmless. To his friends, he's a hero. So let them be heroic over there, as long as they're not beating black people and taking, freedoms from other people. Just let them think that way. Let them have it. They'll eventually die, because look at what, seriously, look at what happened to me. I went from the rebel flag on my wall to sitting here telling, the world through my podcast. I used to be like that. I don't think like that anymore, but I don't denounce what they, I do denounce what they think and how they speak, but I hold them harmless. It's like, they'll go away eventually. You can't just say snap your finger and all of a sudden everybody likes gays. That's not the way it's going to go.
Yeah. I mean, I could get behind that. But I mean, part of me also, it kind of goes back to that like girl with Louis C.K. analogy. Like, it's harmless, but what if you're like, like a black person driving by and you just see like that shit all over oil though,
Right.
Like, is it harmless to them? Or does it make them feel,
I'm sure it does.
certain things?
I'm sure it does. We're just going to have to wait it out, man. And I'm not saying everybody has to like gay people, everybody has to like black people, or everybody has to like Mexicans or white people or anything. But what I am saying is it'll eventually even out. I mean, we're losing that mindset over a period of 50 years now. What will happen in 50 more? This isn't something we're going to change right away.
Yeah, we're definitely on the path to like progressiveness.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
in
Even though
my
sometimes
child-
it looks like it's not, because we have like insurrections and shit, but
right.
like the overall is a net positive. So
Yeah, occasionally people with rebel flags storm the Capitol. It's fine. They'll stop.
those are very rare instances. Hopefully.
All right, man. I have to go cook some banana bread for a person with gluten-free allergies because it's her birthday. So I have to cook a gluten-free banana bread today. Maybe I'll bring you some. I know. That's snowflake culture, man.
I mean, I don't think it's that much. I think it's just they're not trying to die. Oh, you're allergic to peanuts and you don't want peanut butter? What a snowflake.
See? I'm learning, man. I'm learning. I just don't have I don't personally understand any of that, because my only allergy is to some fucking drug that's hell, I don't even remember what I'm allergic to, because I took it once for a migraine headache and I flipped out. I thought it was on acid. So that's my allergy. I don't have allergies to nuts or, all the gluten, any of that shit. So I can't understand it. There you go.
I just find it like funny how like there's all these people that are like super like vegan or vegetarian or whatever, and then they like try their hardest to make whatever they eat like look and like taste like meat,
If you want to talk about my, I could spend a whole podcast talking about my 5-year fucking transition from, eating the steak to filling my plate with things that look like the steak.
To me, like that just doesn't make sense. Like what? I guess it depends on like your motives for being, vegan or vegetarian. But
Right. Well, my initial change to vegetarianism was for my health. I went from meat eater to eating only turkey to eating turkey and fish to eating a pescatarian diet to vegetarian to vegan to whole food plant-based vegan. So it's this fucking journey like we're talking about in culture. It's not something that's fucking funny to me. Or people like, I'd love to be a vegan. It's like, it's not just that simple. It's not the way it works.
Yeah. It's probably better to do it like your way, like
Well, you have to go.
steps.
Yeah. And when you get to that first vegan stage, you're like, well, I need something that looks like meat. It's just a brain thing. It's all it is.
Yeah.
It's a habitual thing. So you deep fry things and you're like, oh, that looks like chicken fingers, and oh, that looks like turkey, and I'm gonna go to the store and buy something that looks like, lunch meat that's made out. Yeah,
My favorite thing is when people make cauliflower buffalo wings, and they're like they eat them like on videos and stuff. They're like, oh my god, it tastes just the same. It's like, damn right that shit don't taste like buffalo wings. Why are you lying to yourself?
I said it. Dude, I went through it. But when you don't have buffalo wings for 3 years and then you have fucking something that resembles a buffalo wing, yeah, it fucking tastes like a buffalo wing. So go fuck yourself, Lalo. I've had plenty of buffalo wing cauliflower. And now the only thing I have that looks like meat is jackfruit.
Yeah, like the jackfruit tacos and stuff.
Yeah, I have
Like
those.
with, like shredded meat and stuff. I'm like, why?
Because it protects the animals.
It
I went
eats it.
from the health thing to
Like if it's a health thing, I get it. Like I understand like trying to imitate the meat because you crave it and you want it, you just can't have it because of your health. But if it's like if your whole mindset is like because of the animals,
right.
but then you still want it to look like and taste like the animals, you just don't actually want to be doing any killing. I don't know. It's just funny to me.
I get it, man. Well, I'm gonna go cook a gluten-free banana
Like
bread
that, like
now.
gluten-free banana bread, like bread it has gluten. So you're gluten-free, but you want bread. That's weird.
It's not the same. I get it. I get it. I'm just, I grew up in. Let's just say that my personality is to make fun of anything that's not like me. There you go. That's being completely honest. You're a gluten-free person. I get to make fun of you because I'm not. That's the way I am.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. All right, man. You said next week you gotta work at a different time.
On the 30th, or not the 30th, the 31st on Halloween, because I'm
All right.
going out of town early in the morning. So
All right.
not next week, but the following week.
All right, cool. I'll put that in my scheduler. I didn't need a scheduler when I was young. I just remembered shit. Now I don't know if I'm too busy or I'm too fucking old to remember stuff.
I still don't use one, even though I should.
Yeah, see? Wait till you're my age, you'll have 2 schedulers. All right. As always, built right into the name, the Thoroughly Wrong Project, and we're talking about racism and woke culture. We could be wrong, but it's just, please, everyone who's listening, just talk about it. Just talk about it. It's okay to talk about it, and you don't have to be hateful anymore, and you don't have to be defensive anymore, because everybody's open to it. And maybe that's what I should be thankful to this woke culture thing, because we are talking about it, and it's a great thing. And everybody can change. Jon Gruden can say he's sorry. He just can't come back to the NFL. That's all.
I mean, he's not that great of a coach to begin with, so he's very overhyped.
I know, but he's still a coach. We had to respect him while he was a coach, and now he's not. Now we can make fun of him and talk about how he wasn't a good coach.
I mean, I always made fun of Jon Gruden just because he like looks funny and stuff.
Oh, it's because he's white?
No, just like the faces he would make. He was like little, I don't know, like, you ever seen like what's that dude's name? Frank Caliendo?
Yeah.
And like Jon Gruden impersonation. It's funny.
I'll have to check that out. So, man, see you next week.
Sounds good.
All right, brother. And this has been Bob.
And Lalo.
All right. And this has been the Thoroughly Wrong Project. I'll see you later, dude.
Later.
You have now experienced the Thoroughly Wrong Project with your podcast hosts, Lalo and Bob. We can now be found on Pandora Radio, Apple Podcasts, Podium Podcast, or by searching The Thoroughly Wrong Project to locate our YouTube channel. You can contact us directly by email at thoroughly-wrong@gmail.com or just leave a comment on any of our platforms. Until next time, thanks for spending your valuable time with us, and remember, always speak up and never be afraid to be thoroughly wrong.